record button. So I'm making sure that I am recording our presentation to make this available for you all later on through a YouTube video, and I will also provide closed captions as well. Okay, Perry, can you hear anything now? Perry, your microphone is on mute.
Can you hear us, Perry? Perry. I hope you can hear us, right? Cynthia, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you guys just fine.
Okay, we hear you now as well. So.
Oh, awesome, great. Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and start. Perfect. And there's always going to be little technological blips along the way. Can everybody hear me okay, first of all?
Yep.
Awesome. I'm thrilled to hear that. Well, again, I am recording this presentation so I can make this available for you all as a YouTube video with closed captions as well. I'm just going to go ahead and introduce myself. I am so happy to be here with you all virtually in Oregon and then also in South Dakota. My name is Cynthia Kane, and I am actually your librarian liaison for the School of Library and Information Management. And I am very glad to have an opportunity to connect with you all during this weekend. I hope that you guys have had a really good Saturday so far. Some of you have been in class for a few hours and others are just starting. What we're going to be doing today is basically going over the nuts and bolts of getting in and out of our library's webpage for you all to start research, not only for LI801. I would imagine that some of you are already enrolled and maybe in some other classes as well, such as LI810 for doing research methods in library and information science. You're going to have some other classes coming up too, in which your professors are going to say to you, I need you to go to the library's webpage and search for items such as books, electronic books, as well as print books, peer-reviewed journal articles. If you can't get them, use interlibrary loan to be able to find the information that you need. And so what I want to do today is facilitate that process as well as I possibly can. And I'm going to give you all a heads up just right at the beginning. We're going to cover a lot of information today. And if you have your own laptops with you, you may wish to follow along as I do some searches and show you some ins and outs of using our resources. But if you start feeling a little bit overwhelmed even today, because you're covering a lot of information today, or afterwards, if you start doing research and you think, I know that Cynthia mentioned something about a database or a resource, but I just don't quite remember what she was talking about. I would love for you all to get in contact with me. I am more than happy to email, but I'm also equally happy to set up this same type of Zoom session for you all that I'm doing today. Sometimes when we're doing research, we can answer questions by sharing screens back and forth within about 5 minutes. That might take a lot longer doing tag team through email or even phone or anything else. So please keep this in mind. I'll make sure that you know how to contact me when we finish. Absolutely ask me if you have any type of research question, and this is what I'm here for. So I'm going to start sharing my screen with you. And as we go along, I will be pausing and making sure that you all are seeing the same thing that I am on my end. So at this point, are you all seeing basically the web search screen with a lot of different pictures on it?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Well, the reason I'm starting here is that I'm actually searching from my home. You can probably see some of my office in the background. So for all intents and purposes, I am as off-campus as anybody else. And I like to do this on purpose because I think it's very important for you all to see what to do and what your screen is going to look like when you start searching in our library's webpage. Now, there's more than one way to get to the library. So you notice here, I just started to type in library.emporia.edu. That to me is the fastest way to get to our library's webpage. However, if you're already in your campus course for LI801 or any other courses, you will also see a link toward the left of your screen that's labeled Library and Archives. And if you click on that link when you're already in Canvas, you will be prompted to open the library's webpage in another tab of your browser. It'll open in a new tab or a new window. So that's kind of a nice shortcut as well. Also, if you are at any other page for the Emporia State University pages, such as slim.emporia.edu, if you were to scroll down to the very bottom of the screen, as I'm doing here, you will always see a link to the Libraries and Archives webpage at the bottom of every page for Emporia State University. So there's always more than one way to get to where we need to be. So what I wanted to do first is show you some different ways of searching. And as we go along, I'm going to go over some of the advantages and the drawbacks to every type of searching for information, because it can get a little bit confusing when you start searching, even if you're very experienced. If you're already working in libraries, you know databases in and out. Every library has its little idiosyncrasies when it comes to searching or finding information or finding the best resource to use. The first thing I wanted to start with is actually this first tab that pops up, because this tends to be where a lot of people will start searching for topics for any type of research project or paper. This tab is actually called our Discovery Search. I will tell you, I get a lot of questions about our Discovery Search. This is the best way that I can explain it, and for you all to think about this as budding information professionals as well. The Discovery Search is actually a composite of access to the library catalog for not only print resources but also electronic books. It will also link to some databases, but not every single database that we have to find articles. I think of it much more as indeed a discovery platform for information. When I say that, that does not necessarily mean that our library is going to have access to every single item that you retrieve with a Discovery Search for information. So what does that mean for you all as SLIM students? It means that the Discovery Search is a great way to start if you are really just trying to narrow and pin down the details of a topic. And I'm going to give you an example of this. So one of my roles in the library is assessment, and I deal a lot in terms of information literacy, library instruction assessment, assessing our resources and services to make sure that we're doing a good job, and to also see what we can improve. So as a result, I'm very interested in that type of information. I am going to start with our Discovery Search, and I'm just going to type in information literacy for library instruction, basically getting people comfortable with finding information and evaluating it more effectively. And I'm going to use the word "and." The word "and" is a linking word that sometimes you don't have to use. So for example, if you're searching just on Google for websites, you don't really have to type the word "and." It is implied in that search. The word "and" is not always implied in every database, though, or every way of searching for information online. So I just tend to type the word "and." I want information literacy and assessment. So pretty easy search so far. And I promised today that what I'm going to do is show you the nuts and bolts and the practical aspects as well as theoretical aspects of searching for information for your SLIM classes. So here's one practical tip. Up here at the very top of the screen, this says, "Hello guest, log in for full access." When you are in the Discovery Search and you're just looking to see what in the world is out there for your topic, click on that. And there's going to be a very specific reason why I want you to do that. The reason I wanted you to click on log in for full access is that if you don't do that, it's going to make things much more problematic in terms of being able to retrieve the complete full text of articles that you may find through the Discovery service. And it gets very frustrating. I answer a lot of questions on this. So I caution that the Discovery Search is a huge search for information. And I am not exaggerating. I did a very basic keyword search on information literacy and assessment, and I have over 512,000 references to books, to articles, to other resources. So I encourage the discovery search if you're just sort of kind of out there figuring out what is available for your topic or for your search. But it's really not going to be a very good, precise way of finding items such as very, very specific peer-reviewed journal articles for your topic. I'm going to show you some other resources that are far more effective than that. But I'm not discouraging the use of the discovery search. I just wanted to show you, again, some of its advantages and some of its drawbacks. So when I started to search, over here, this automatically limited to anything that ESU, in other words, our library, might have availability for. And we see with the first one, we have actually a print book called Information Literacy Assessment, Standards-Based Tools and Assignments. This will tell you where it's located in our library on the Emporia campus. The call number, we are slowly switching over, by the way, from the Dewey Decimal System to the Library of Congress classification system. Any new books that we acquire now are being cataloged with LC call numbers. I say that because you may see a mixture of them. Not anything you really have to be concerned about. It's just more for locating. And this says that it is available. So it's actually not checked out. So you might say to yourself, well, Cynthia, that's all very well and good, but it looks like that's a print book, and I'm not actually in Emporia. You can request any books that are owned by the Emporia campus library, and I will show you that in just a second. Essentially, you would go back to the library's homepage and click on a button for interlibrary loan. And with interlibrary loan, that will enable you to request books and articles that are not actually accessible through the library, but it will also let you put in a request as a distance education student for print books that are here at the Emporia campus library. So please don't forget that as an option. We will mail them to your home address. You do have to pay for the mailing back, unfortunately, but please remember you have equitable access to information regardless of location. If you ever have any questions about that, please don't hesitate to contact me. That's what I'm here for. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit farther because I actually wanted to show you record number 3. I have not actually limited this search just to books. Again, this is a discovery search, and because it is the discovery search, it's going to be pulling in some articles as well. So the first article that I have is Adaptation, Translation, and Validation of Information Literacy Assessment Instrument. Now, this is actually from a journal that is peer-reviewed in our field, the Journal of the Association for Information Science and Technology. Record number 4, combining self-assessments and achievement tests and information literacy assessment, looks like it is also available through the discovery search. Now, something I do want you to pay attention to here because this can make a difference. This one says this is available as linked full text, whereas record number 4 says it's available directly as PDF full text. What in the world is the difference between the two? This is kind of a meta thing when it comes to libraries. We have access to a lot of full text databases that contain the full text of articles. Record number 4 is actually an excellent example of that. This is from a journal called Assessment and Evaluation in Higher Education, but it's actually linking from a database that we have access to that's called Professional Development Collection, and that's why you have that database listed. Over here, this one looks a little bit more confusing. This says database computer source. Actually, this is a linked full text to a direct electronic periodical subscription that we have to the Journal of the Association for Information Science and Technology. So what does that mean for you? Well, it means that if I go down here and click on PDF full text, and I clicked, remember, on that full access. That's why it's so important with the discovery search to click on login for full access. That popped up right there. And I can read that article, I can save it to Google Drive, I can download it, a lot of different things that I can do with this. We're going to navigate back to result list. And if I go back down here to record number 3 under linked full text, notice that that's not quite as seamless. That's because the linked full text is linking to our subscription through Wiley Online Library to the Journal of the Association for Information Science and Technology. However, if I click on PDF here, and we'll let that do its thing, that was more of a two-step process. So don't get discouraged and don't get, I would say, confused if you see that the access to the PDF of our articles may be seamless. It may just be a one-click, or it may be a couple of clicks. A lot of it just depends on how we are actually getting access to those journals, if they're electronic journal subscriptions or if they're available through our databases. I wanted to go back to this result list, though, because I am a big believer in time management and managing your projects effectively. So something you can do with the discovery search, and you can do this in a lot of other databases as well, there's a little folder here that you can click on. And again, this is not only in the discovery search, it's also available in a lot of other databases. Essentially what I'm doing here is going back up to the screen, and I'm going to move my screen here so that I can see this a little bit better. So my display is actually changed over here on the right side of the screen. This actually says now my folder has items. So if I click on folder view, and I really love showing students how to do this. This is a huge time saver. Now, these are actually print books, the first two that I clicked on. So you're not getting, unfortunately, the full text of the books, but you're getting the records for the books that you could then request from our library. But I also clicked on record number 3 and record number 4 that had the full text available. So if I were to go to email at this point, I can type in my email address. I'm just going to go ahead and do this right now so you can see. I am ckane1@emporia.edu. And here's another technical tip. You don't have to do this, but I highly recommend typing in something in the subject line. The reason is that I'm going to actually send this information in the folder, plus the links to those articles, to my email address. If I don't type something in the subject line, I have found that depending upon how high the junk email filter is or the spam filter on whatever email system you're using, sometimes it's going to get caught in the spam folder, and then you think, I know I emailed that to myself, but it just simply is not popping up. For some reason, putting something in the subject line will help in different email systems, including Outlook, to flag that as not spam. So over here, this is something else that I love. And I always joke with a lot of my freshman students, I'm old enough still to get very excited about the fact that you can actually do this kind of stuff. So you notice over here that I changed my citation format. Well, what's going to happen is if I email those records to myself, I will actually get a separate bibliography, again, in my email, of all 4 of those references in APA format, which is what you're going to be using for your papers and projects in SLIM. Now, the information may not be 100% correct because it will only be as good as the metadata of the record. So in other words, if something is capitalized that should not be capitalized, that's probably going to carry over to your citations, and you're still going to need to go in, really do a lot of proofreading and make sure that they are the way that they should be for APA style. But it's a heck of a lot easier to do that when you actually have those records in front of you. So if I were to click on send, that information is going to pop up in my email. Huge time saver for information. I'm going to navigate back here and click again on this and go back to the library's homepage. I want to pause at this point. Are there questions so far on what I've been doing with the discovery search? Okay.
We'll try.
And sometimes we have questions as we actually start doing projects. So again, I just want to make sure that I'm covering the highlights of what you need to know, and then always come back to me if you have any questions. So I wanted to show you the discovery search.
Yeah, hold on a second. I might need
a question.
on here.
Okay.
Can you hear me, Cynthia?
So the reason I wanted to show you all the discovery search is that that is what pops up first on the library's webpage, and that tends to be where a lot of people will go for information. It is not the only resource, and it does have its drawbacks. I would say that one of the biggest drawbacks of the discovery search is when you have the citation for an article that you found somewhere else, and the full text is not available, but you would like to see if you could find the full text somewhere in our library's resources. If you have something like that, do not use the discovery search for that. What I'm going to do now is move on to this
Cynthia,
next tab.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I sure can. It sounds very space age.
We have a question here, and I can't get the audio to work right.
Okay, absolutely.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
We have a couple of questions, maybe, Morgan?
Absolutely.
Is there a way to get to that APA formatting auto citation link without going through email?
I am not quite sure if I'm understanding this, so please correct me if I'm not answering this question correctly.
You tried to, you were emailing the articles and the books, the citations to yourself in the email function, and that's where you chose the APA format.
Yes, that's exactly it.
So other than that, can they go to an APA format, like, or do they have to have something like Zotero or?
Thank you, Perry. I appreciate that. That's an excellent question. What we find is that most databases, and I'm going to show you this in this next step as well, will support what I showed you. Most databases will have a cite feature or citation tools or something of that nature that will also let you go ahead and choose a separate item, like a separate article, and go ahead and generate the APA citation for that as well. So you don't necessarily have to have something separate like Zotero or Mendeley. Those are examples of bibliographic management software programs. Those will actually let you download citations and then create bibliographies en masse that way. But you don't have to have access to that. And in fact, this is actually a perfect segue into our databases, and I will show you all the next step on the cite or citation tools for also creating APA citations in another way. Does that help?
Yes, thanks. And,
okay, awesome.
Hold on.
And there was another question?
Okay, good. No. Okay. We're fine, Cynthia. Thank you.
Okay, all right. So yes, absolutely. I will show you that other way of creating citations. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this tab for databases now. And this is where I really encourage students to start when you want to focus a little bit more specifically upon finding peer-reviewed journal articles for your research. Now, we already saw we can find journal articles through the discovery search, and you know what? It's okay. But one of the drawbacks of the discovery search, again, is that it is actually not encompassing every single database that we have. We have 162 databases. That seems like quite a few. So if I know beyond the shadow of a doubt that I have to find peer-reviewed journal articles for my research needs, I'm going to start with the Databases tab. And then I'm going to click on this drop-down menu for subjects, for all subjects. And for our purposes today, we're going to go to the Library and Information Science. And yes, you see my face there as well. You can actually email me directly from here again at ckane1@emporia.edu. And we're not going to go through every single database here, of course. I am going to highlight two in particular that will start you with your research, but I also want you to be aware of the fact that there are many possibilities. So, for example, a lot of you may be interested on down the line of specializing in children's literature or young adult literature. If you're interested in that, we have some very specialized databases, such as Children's Literature Comprehensive Database. That is a great one if you ever have to do like a lesson plan, or you want to see what books have been reviewed for different genres or different subjects in children's literature. So that would be a good one to use for collection development purposes when you take collection development courses. The one I'm going to focus on today is Library and Information Science Source. And often when I am working with students, what will happen is I may say to you, have you done a search in Library and Information Science Source? Now notice something when I clicked on that link. Remember that in the Discovery search, I had already said login for full access, so it's recognizing me off campus. If you were to go directly to the Databases tab and click on something such as Library and Information Science Source, at that point, without going through the Discovery search, you would most likely be prompted to enter your BuzzIn username and password to authenticate yourself as being affiliated with the issue. So don't be surprised if that does happen. I'm authenticated already because I logged in through the Discovery search. Now here, I always go directly to an advanced search. And the reason I do that is the advanced search lets me do a lot of really nice limitations. So I want to do my search again for information literacy assessment. And I'm going to limit this now to first-year students. I'm kind of curious to see what would happen with first-year college students, how to tell what they need, what they already need to know in terms of evaluating information, finding information, and so forth. Because I'm doing a rather broad search, it's going to be more effective if I say that I want my words, my keywords, to appear in the abstract or the summary of the articles in Library and Information Science Source. Otherwise, I might get extraneous information that doesn't really have anything to do with my information need. So if you ever get a result like that in a database, you might see if you've already limited your search to the keywords within the abstract, and sometimes that can help. We're going to do first year. I'm going to pause for just a second here. Notice what's happening. I'm getting suggested terms to search just as you can in Google. Use those suggested terms because they can really help you if you're struggling with coming up with different words to use for searching and you're just not quite sure. Let's do first year. Now I've limited my search, and I'm just going to do an initial search here to see what I get. The reason I did that is I really only got 5 results. So actually that tells me that that might be a good research project. However, I can go back over here, even just with 5 references, and I could say even of those 5 references, I want only scholarly or peer-reviewed journals. Now, as it happened, all 5 of those were also considered to be scholarly or peer-reviewed journals, so I did okay with that. And what I'm getting here, again, would be the PDF full text, except for record number 3. And I'm delighted that this one actually came up because this is the next step I wanted to show you. So searching in a database like Library and Information Science Source, it is not specifically a 100% full-text database. But that also means that you do not want to rule out references or citations that you get in those databases, because even if the full text isn't immediately available, there's a good chance that we can find it elsewhere. So record number 3 is going to be a good example of this. Charting success using practical measures to assess information literacy skills in the first year writing course. This is from a journal called Evidence-Based Library and Information Practice. But notice something? I don't have anything here that says that the full text is available. Now, there's a great temptation to say, all right, in that case, I'm just going to click on Interlibrary Loan, and I'm going to request a copy of this article. But before you do that, this is the step that I want you to follow. So we're going to open up yet another tab. And we're going to take that tab back to the library's webpage. I tend to have several tabs open, as you can see, and I always like to keep one tab open to the library's webpage just for this reason. And this is something, again, that is more technical, that is not immediately evident. So I just copied the title of the journal, but I didn't copy the title of the article. The reason is that back on the library's homepage, I'm now going to click on another tab, the third one that's called Journals. Now this tab is going to actually launch me into another service that we have that's called Browsing, and I love Browsing. Browsing is a very easy visual way to see if articles are available in a number of resources from the library. So in this particular instance, we're going to copy the title of the journal. And there it is. This is looking pretty promising so far. And going back to my citation, it looks like I need volume 10, issue 2 from 2015. So look, we're going to go over here to 2015. Click on volume 10, issue 2. And I'm looking for Charting Success Using Practical Measures. Aha, there it is. So we're going to scroll down here. Click on this link. And Browsing is automatically now looking for the full text of that article. This actually is an open access journal, by the way, and I know that Dr. Dow, among other faculty members, have published in this journal. And there's the PDF. And there it goes. So you see, this is why I do emphasize, don't give up just because this specific one wasn't immediately available as full text in Library and Information Science source. Now, you notice that I actually clicked on the link for this record because this is actually going back to the question that Perry was relaying as well.
Cynthia?
Yes.
The students were wondering if you could repeat that process.
Of course, I would be more than happy to do that.
There are a lot of steps involved, so.
There are. Unfortunately, it's not a very easy link, and I want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable with that, so I would be happy to do that. Let's go back over here.
Thank you.
Oh, no worries. And don't let me forget, too, because I also want to go over the APA style, the citation question, so I'll be sure and go back to that. I'm actually going to close some of these tabs so I can repeat that process. So we are now back in Library and Information Science source. Record number 3, Charting Success. We notice again, there's absolutely no link here in Library and Information Science source to the full text of the article. But I want to see if the library maybe has access to the full text of this article in another way. So I'm going to go back over here first, open my tab. Actually, I have it here too. Keep a new tab open just to the library's webpage. We're now going to go back to our result list. And I am copying the title of the journal, but not the title of the article. The reason is that at this point, it's going to be a little bit more effective to search at the journal level to see if the accessibility online is actually available through our library or not. And I'm now going to copy the name of the journal. And it's going to be pretty easy to identify the name of the journal here because it is in italics, so that's what we're looking for. Now we will go back, and it is a convoluted process. I wish it were a little bit more straightforward. And we're going to click on the Journals tab, which launches a service called Browsine, and Browsine will let you look for the availability of journals electronically in other databases or other resources. I am now pasting the name of the journal. And this tells me that evidence-based library and information practice is indeed available. Browsine is basically just facilitating this access. And when I go back here to the result list, I need to look for 2015 for the year, Volume 10, Issue 2. So I still have to drill down a little bit farther. And there's Volume 10, Issue 2. And there is the article, Charting Success. And at this point, I'm looking at the citation for the article from Evidence-Based Library and Information Practice. And
Cynthia?
then if I just click on the PDF.
Cynthia,
Yes,
we have another question.
absolutely.
Why isn't browsing integrated?
Browsing is as integrated as it is possible to be integrated. I'll tell you what will happen. Browsing is integrated in terms of databases. So in other words, if I had a citation for an article that was from Library and Information Science Source, but the full text wasn't available in that database, if the full text were available in another database, then I would still have to go back to Browsine and do the journal search. But in that case, it would take me much more directly to the article. This is basically our limitation right now. It just simply is, it's as integrated as probably it's going to be at this particular point in time. The other thing about Browsine to keep in mind, a lot of articles are not necessarily going to be available in other databases. They're going to be available in, this is a good example, open access journals that are not necessarily going to be linking to any other library systems or anything like that. So this is basically probably your best option right now. It's still much, much better than not having, access to articles at all, or just saying, well, I'm just really not sure where to find that. I just want to make sure that you all are comfortable with ways of finding access to articles if they are not immediately available in databases. And I wish I had a more positive answer, but this is kind of where we are right now.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. You're very welcome. Did that make sense again when I went through that the second time?
Yeah, that was good. That was great. Thanks.
Absolutely. No worries whatsoever. So I wanted to go back over here because I promised that I would go back to our first question that came up a few minutes ago. I'm going to keep on with record number 3.
Could you hold on just a second?
Absolutely.
Sorry. First of all, you can do this in,
Are there any questions that you all had while you make sure you felt like you could? Okay, good. Sounds like it.
Can you go directly to Browsine, Cynthia?
You can indeed go directly to Browsine. However, here is my caution. In fact, let's just go back here right now. That's a great question. And I get a lot of questions on this too. And actually, I know that Emily had questions from her class too on what Browsine is. So this is actually a perfect time to do this. So I'm just back at the library's webpage. And let's just click on the Journals tab. which will again launch Browsine. So this is Browsine in terms of, again, advantages and limitations. Browsine is absolutely wonderful if you want to browse journals. Browsine is not the place to go when you are simply searching for articles from a wide range of journals on a specific topic. To do the latter, you always want to go to the discovery search or go to a database, which will actually include a lot of references from various articles on a wide range of subjects. However, this is the fun thing that you can do with Browsine. I really like this. So you can browse by, hence the name Browsine. You can browse by different topics or different subjects. But there's something over here that's called My Bookshelf and also My Articles. And I do want to show you this as well. You can create a free account in Browsine. And the free account, I'm going to go ahead and log in with my account. This will be a good test to see if I can remember my password. You can use, with Browsine, if you want to use your BuzzIn password to create your account, you can, but you don't have to. Good. I actually remembered that. Okay, so this is what I like about Browsine. Let's say that I have different research topics that I'm doing. So you notice that I have under here, they call it a bookcase, but it's really like a folder on your that you might create on your own computer. I'm interested right now in focus groups for assessment purposes. So I named this one Focus Groups Research. And as I find journals, or I might even find articles within journals in Browsine that relate to my research needs, I can actually add them to this bookcase or to this folder, and then it will always be accessible to me. And I can also do the same thing with my articles. This is one that I actually saved. So the fun thing, you see I have one called Information Literacy Assessment. So if I were to go back to Browsine, and I'm just going to type in another journal that I know is on here, Journal of Academic Librarianship. Okay, and notice again here, I'm not really searching by a particular subject or topic because that's really not what Browsine is set up to do. It's sort of like if you had a huge library filled with journal issues and you were just sort of browsing through those issues. This is the way to think of Browsine. It's like browsing virtually through journal issues, and that's probably about the best way to think of it. So I'm just going to find an article that looks kind of interesting. Ooh, that one actually looks really interesting. Play on. Comparing active learning techniques. Actually, let's go back here. There we are. I'm going to close this tab for just a second. Actually, let me go back here. Sometimes we close tabs that we did not want to close. Okay, so I needed to just open Browsine again. Notice, though, that it kept me logged on over here, so I didn't have to log back on. Here we go. We'll go back over here. I'm changing this a little bit there. There we go. So I'm going to go back over here. And actually, I needed to click on that down arrow. There's a down arrow key under any of these articles, so if any of them look interesting, this is where I could save to my articles, for example. And I could save this to a general collection or whatever folder I already created. And that's probably one of the best features about browsing. It will let you basically search the tables of contents of issues. And if any of those articles look interesting, you can save those citations by clicking on that down arrow key, do Save to My Articles. You can export a citation. I know we still had questions about how to export citations in different ways. You can do this in browsing. If you were using Zotero or Mendeley or another type of bibliographic management program, that would let you do that as well. Or you could go directly to download PDF or read the full text. So that's probably one of the biggest advantages of browsing. It will let you browse journals, browse journal articles, add them to My Articles, and then you have them saved in another way. So does that kind of help?
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, sure. Yeah, there's just a lot of really neat things that you can do with browsing. I did want to go back real quickly to this tab and also make sure that we're covering questions. I'm back to Library and Information Science Source for that article on charting success. If I were to go over here and click on Cite, this is another way of finding a particular bibliographic citation in a citation style for that specific article. This is actually a very good example. So when I clicked on Cite for this specific article, here is the APA citation. But remember, I told you that it's only as good as the bibliographic information within the record. This is a perfect example. This is not exactly correct APA style, because in APA, we actually do not capitalize the following words of the title or the subtitle of an article. So success would not be capitalized. Practical measures and so forth would also not be capitalized, but they are capitalized when I created this citation because within the metadata of the record, these words are capitalized, and so that's why it came across that way. So what would I do in this particular instance? I could export, or I could just highlight that citation, copy and paste it into a running bibliography, but again, going back and correcting what I needed to do to make it for correct APA format. So does that make sense? So there's more than one way of kind of generating those citations.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, sure. I am going to go back over here because as we're kind of getting closer to the end of our time frame, I promised I would show you the Interlibrary Loan button. And I mentioned earlier that that is the button that you would use if you wanted to request items that are not available, or something like print books that are available here at the Emporia campus library. So as distance education students, you could click on the Interlibrary Loan button, log in with your buzz-in information, and if you've never done interlibrary loan through ESU before, you're going to get basically a message. It's going to look kind of like this, actually. It will ask you to put in your personal information, and you only have to do that one time. So after that's done, you could go to the new request option and then click on article if you're requesting a journal article, book. This would also, the book would also be where you would go if you were requesting a print book from the Emporia campus library to be mailed to you. And the only thing you would want to do here is, under notes, if you just highlight and put in a note there that you are a distance education student, which we will also be able to see from your personal information, that also helps us to say, okay, this person needs this book, they need it to be checked out to them, and then they need that mailed to them. And you can generally get these books for about 8 weeks at a time. However, again, if you ever check out anything and had something mailed to you, you can renew items from the library online by going to My Library account. And yes, you have to sign in again. I'm glad that came up because I have a feeling that that's probably, ooh, that's good to know actually that that's not working. Okay, so don't do that. Okay, sorry about that. We're converting to a new system, III Sierra, and I have a feeling that we have other areas here that have not actually been fixed yet. So you should be able to renew items online, but you can always contact us as well if you needed to renew anything and needed it for like the rest of the semester as well. Again, don't hesitate to ask us on anything that's in physical form that you need, because as distance education students, you have equitable access to the information that you need. Emily, I know that there was a question from your class that I just want to highlight real quickly as well. Under databases, I've been focusing more upon library and information science, but we have a lot of other databases and a lot of other fields. On this side, the right side of the screen, and you can also find this under the letter N, I just want to make sure that you need some other reading. You have access as Emporia State students and faculty and staff to the New York Times digital edition. This is free access. You can register for your free account here, and it's good for 1 year from the time of registration. And then once that year is up, you'll get a note in your email that it's ready for that to be renewed. You do register with your emporia.edu or g.emporia.edu account, but that's just something that's kind of a little extra thing that we really want to make sure people know that they do have access to. It's nice to be able to read the New York Times online. And just to wrap up, another thing that we have, or another service, is something called Flipster. And Flipster is a way, literally, of flipping through a variety of magazines, not only general magazines, but also, sorry about that, I kind of zoomed in there a little bit more. Also, there we go. Basically, Flipster is a way, as I said, of browsing through not only general magazines, you can browse through some of a lot of different topics as well. So for example, there's clean eating. Now again, since I'm already logged in and I haven't actually exited my session, it still recognized me as being an authenticated Emporia State University user. But this is kind of fun to be able to do. Some of you may have access to magazines like through Amazon Prime or something like that. That was just sort of a little extra thing I wanted to show you as well. There's also an app that you can download that will work both on iOS and also on Android devices for Flipster. And if you download that app, then you can actually download some of these issues and be able to read them offline as well. So at this point,
Cynthia, we had a question.
absolutely. I was just getting ready to say, what questions are still out there?
So they were wondering, is the ILL service only for books that ESU owns, or is it any book?
No. It's basically, and I apologize if I did not make that clear. You use the interlibrary loan service for books that are owned by ESU, but it goes way beyond that. If you need access to a book or to an article that is absolutely not available through any of our databases or at the Emporia Library, absolutely, interlibrary loan is your service that we offer as an ESU student. And for articles, you're going to be able to get those articles sent to you as PDFs, and then, of course, you know, those are yours to keep, to print, or to download. So availability regardless of location.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. What questions are still out there too?
One more, Cynthia, from here. Hold on.
Yes.
The due date is when it has to get back to Emporia. Is that correct?
Yes, that usually is the way that it is. However, I'm glad you said that, because if it is a book that's owned by the Emporia campus library, a few days before it's due, like a couple of two or 3 days before it's due, give us a call, and actually the contact information for the Interlibrary Loan Office will be included in the paperwork that is sent to you with the book. Call us, because if it's one that's owned by our library, we can generally go ahead and renew it unless somebody else actually has a hold on it and needs it to be returned. For interlibrary loan books, in other words, books that are from other libraries, call us again a few days before the book is due if you felt like you would need to renew it, and that would give us time to contact the lending library and see if they would be willing to extend the due date by a few days as well. But yeah, generally the due date is, it can be the date that it's due back to the library. We tend to be a little bit flexible on that because sometimes there are delays with the mail, and no one has control over that. So we generally aren't going to be, really harsh about a fine or anything like that unless it's way, way overdue and we haven't heard anything. Does that help?
Yes, thanks.
Yeah. There's no sense in being really hard-nosed about things like that. Other questions that I can cover?
We have a question here. Hold on just a sec.
Yes.
That's not Kathy Buckman, by the way. She's just using Kathy Buckman is my counterpart from Emporia.
So Tim is asking about JSTOR specifically, but databases in general. Are the journals that are in the databases the same across institutions? Would you find the same thing in JSTOR at ESU as you would in another institution's subscription?
Oh, that's an awesome question. Let me tackle that general and then specific, if I may. So generally, if you are searching in a database such as Academic Search Complete, which is a very general database, that access to journals and full text in that specific database will usually be the same at Emporia State University, at Portland State University, at anywhere else for that type of database. JSTOR actually is a very unique one, and that's a good example. JSTOR is actually a collection of archival journals by discipline or by subject. So the JSTOR service itself offers subscriptions and actually offers access to a separate series of collections. So what that means is here at Emporia State, we have, I think, 6 collections through JSTOR for the arts and humanities and sciences. That means that if you saw JSTOR available at another academic library, that specific one might not necessarily be the same, because that academic library might be subscribing to a separate set of collections, a different set of collections through the encompassing JSTOR service that we might not have access to. So short answer is, it actually just kind of depends upon the database. It's a fairly discrete database. Library and Information Science Source, for example, yeah, that one's going to be the same. But something like JSTOR and Project Muse is another example. Project Muse is a full-text resource of scholarly journals, but they have different collections as well. They'll have like a basic collection and a premium collection, and it all depends on what that academic library has access to. So most of the time, yes, but it also depends upon the very nature of the database and if different collections are available within that database. And I hope that wasn't too confusing.
That was helpful, thank you.
That was helpful, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Other questions?
We have one more here too.
Awesome.
Sure. So Montana was noticing the chat box that you have on your website, and she
Yes.
was offline right now.
Yes.
Is that open when the library's open, when the reference desk is open? What's the story there?
Thank you for asking that. That's a great question. Yes, we do have a chat box for Ask a Librarian. The library is actually open right now until 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, and you can see the library hours over here. However, on Saturdays, we are not actually staffing the chat with a librarian because we often don't really get that many questions. The chat service itself is generally staffed during most of the other hours that the library is open. So for example, tomorrow on Sunday, we have a graduate assistant who will be working, and so the chat would be available then. Monday through Thursdays, it's usually available from about 10 a.m. Central Standard Time to midnight. Friday, about 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And as I said, it's not necessarily staffed on Saturdays. So what happens is, since it's not actually staffed right now, you could still submit your question. We use a system called LibAnswers, which some of you may be familiar with if you're familiar with the SpringShare system. And when we go in here, these are actually kind of FAQs or frequently asked questions. So for example, you see one that pops up immediately is, can distance education students have library books sent to them? So if this is offline, you could actually type a question in here and see if the answer is available in the FAQs. But if it's online, and you may reach me at some point because I staff this during different hours, this would pop up, and it would pop up with a chat widget, and you are more than welcome to ask a question that way. Now, the thing I would caution, I would say that our chat service is really great for pretty specific questions. Do you have this book? Do you have access to this journal article? And so forth. I would say for more in-depth research questions, when you're really kind of struggling, since now you know that I am your librarian liaison, you can use the chat service for that, but I would also really, really encourage you for more in-depth research questions to contact me directly. Again, it's ckane1@emporia.edu, and we can either email or, as I mentioned at the beginning, set up one of these Zoom appointments because I would love to Zoom in with you. You can share your screen with me just as I was sharing my screen with you. And between the two of us, we can really work out something that's a little bit more in-depth. So chat's really good for quick questions. I would encourage Zooming in or doing something more in-depth with me for something more complex.
Any other questions? Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think those are all our questions here.
Awesome. Perry,
Yeah,
any other questions from?
No, we're fine here too. Thanks so much, Cynthia.
You are very welcome. I will be converting this into a YouTube video, and as I said, then I will make that available with closed captions as well. And thank you so much for inviting me into your classrooms today. I really enjoyed this, and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right.